I'm in Darmstadt, in the German state of Hesse. We're about 30 kilometers south of Frankfurt. Darmstadt is not really a classic tourist destination in Germany, but there is plenty to see around here. Like this building, designed by the Austrian architect Friedensreich Hundertwasser. Or the State Theatre. At the time of its inauguration in 1972, it was the most expensive theatre built in post-war Germany. But really, I'm here for this, the Darmstadt Artists Colony. It was founded at the end of the 19th century in a neighborhood called Mathildenhöhe. The basic idea was to unite art and everyday life. Now, over 100 years after it was built, it has a pretty good shot at becoming a World Heritage Site. Mathildenhöhe is Darmstadt's premier site and the place where locals like to get together. There's a pretty odd mix of styles here. The wedding tower in Jugendstil, then comes a Russian chapel, and in between a large exhibition building. It's being renovated at the moment. The Russian church was not actually part of the artists' colony, even though it was built at roughly the same time as the surrounding buildings. The complex includes a number of imposing houses. It was home to the artists' colony until the start of the First World War. I meet with Philipp Gutbrot, the director of the Mathildenhöhe Institute. It's fair to say you have the nicest office in the city. Which idea kick-started the artists' colony?
There was a Grand Duke who succeeded to the title at age 23, and he had this modern vision of supporting the arts while stimulating the economy. He hoped to attract artists to Darmstadt who would come up with new product designs for the region's manufacturers that would make Hesse's economy flourish.
Were there any personalities that turned out to be especially influential in the artists' colony?
There were two especially prominent names. One was Josef Maria Ulbrich, the Viennese architect who built most of the buildings in Mathildenhöhe. He was one of the most important architects here. And there was Peter Behrens, who was originally a painter and ended up being one of the foremost architects of the 20th century. Just think, two Bauhaus directors were his students, Mies van der Rohe and Walter Gropius. And Le Corbusier was another pupil of Peter Behrens. He was self-taught and built his first house here. He was barely known to the public. So we're hoping if our World Heritage application is successful, it will make this history more well known.
Another special aspect was that Mathildenhöhe was open to the public, wasn't it?
Exactly. Everything you see here was part of 4 major construction exhibitions, and they were open to everyone. That's very important. People could walk into the architects' houses. They could see which cups Ulbrich drank from, which curtains and musical instruments he had. Each object was created for each house and could be purchased. That was very modern for the time. This idea of combining support for the economy with support for the arts. The works were meant to be sold. Companies were meant to receive orders, and everything could be viewed at the exhibitions.
The former workshop, designed by Ulbrich, is today a museum. The exhibition shows everyday objects fashioned by the artists in residence.
Here are 4 chairs designed by members of the Darmstadt Artists Colony. We wanted to show that they were working together here in one place. Here you see one by Peter Behrens, a chair from his dining room. We see curved lines, but it's overall very simple and functional. And this white frame has a certain touch of practicality that I find really fascinating. To the side, you see a piece by Patrice Huber, a very young designer who worked here. He was just 19 or 20 when he came here. Ulbrich designed these 2 chairs. One is for outside. And that was a restaurant chair. You can tell by the back. Easy to push back and forth.
An early example of form follows function.
Precisely. It wasn't just a matter of artists trying things out here. The pieces were meant to be functional and inexpensive to produce, which helped the companies bring in lots of orders. These are wonderful double doors from Peter Behrens' house. There you see the same ornamentation that shows up in this armchair.
Reminds me of the film Metropolis.
True.
Architects and artists designed all kinds of objects, even gadgets and cutlery. They built the basis for the interdisciplinary approach that would make the Bauhaus world famous.
Here we have Peter Behrens' Wertheim dining room. Everything was designed by Peter Behrens and then manufactured by various companies and factories. But it could all be purchased as a complete work of art. And this is also how it was displayed in Berlin's Wertheim department store in 1902, which is quite remarkable. How modern it is.
Unfassbar modern, ja.
I'm not leaving without climbing up the wedding tower. And the entryway is already stunning.
Here we see The Kiss by Friedrich Wilhelm Kleukens, designed especially for the foyer of the wedding tower. That tower was a gift from the city of Darmstadt to the Grand Duke Ernst Ludwig. These two winged beings come from a libretto by Richard Wagner, Wieland, the Smith. It was published as a book here in Mathildenhöhe and then produced in a spectacular way.
We're now at the top of the wedding tower, and I'm still not entirely sure why it's called that.
This tower was a present from Darmstadt to the Grand Duke.
Just a little something.
Ernst Ludwig married for the second time in 1905, and the city thought about what they could gift the Grand Duke. The first idea was a precious chest for jewels. Ernst Ludwig found out and told him he would love to have an observation tower on the Mathildenhöhe. Then Albrecht designed this tower, and for the first time in the history of architecture, there was a row of windows wrapped around the corner.
The tower offers an amazing view of Darmstadt, and to the north, you can even see the Frankfurt skyline. And it keeps living up to its name, doesn't it?
Indeed. Weddings take place here, which fits nicely with the tower's name. People come from all over the world, and there's a wedding every half hour. So married couples are churned out as if it's an assembly line.
Honoring the first owner's legacy. 20th century architecture as we know it would have been unthinkable without Mathildenhöhe. It was a first step into modernity. That includes the villas of Mathildenhöhe, which were completed in 1901. The Deiter's house is one of many buildings here designed by architect Josef Maria Olbrich. It's also where a team is working on the bid to make Mathildenhöhe Darmstadt a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a goal almost 10 years in the making. Art historian Ludger Hönnekens heads the team. Where would you put the artists' colony in Germany's cultural history?
Ja, es ist sicherlich
In architectural terms, it was the cornerstone of the development of modernism. We might call it a gateway. That gateway opened in the early 20th century here in Mathildenhöhe, in Darmstadt, for all that constitutes modernism in the progressive sense. That's vital. And Bauhaus, for example, wouldn't have been conceivable in this form without Mathildenhöhe.
Darmstadt's mayor, too, is convinced his city can win the title. Why does Darmstadt deserve to become a World Heritage City?
The Mathildenhöhe artists offered a universal design for reform. They didn't just create buildings. Garden art, exhibition art, and interior design were all redesigned too. The spirit of this place is something that radiates far beyond Darmstadt. And that's why it'll become a World Heritage Site.
Mathildenhöhe is truly a place with spirit, and with or without the World Heritage title, it's certainly worth a visit.